Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, your host for this episode of the Masters of Self University podcast. I want to talk to you today about how communication does not improve your relationship. It actually oftentimes makes it so much worse. It does way more damage, way more harm than healing or fixing anything. And you have heard from like everybody everywhere. Communication. What is the key to healthy relationships? Communication is the key. Communication. Communication is the key. Communicate with your partner. No. Stop it. Shut up. Zip your lips. You have to learn how to shut the F up in your relationships. Let me explain. Stay with me on this one. What are you communicating? Think about this. How many of you, when you have a conflict with your partner, end up in a fucking two-hour downward spiral of just arguing and hell? 3 hours later, tonight, 2-3 hours of arguing and talking and blah, getting nowhere, spinning in circles, running around in a fucking circle, right? In the hamster wheel, getting nowhere. And then sometimes that continues the next day. And then sometimes day 3, day 5, you're still not right with each other. If you just listen while I talk, right? No, communication is not key. What is the key? Consciousness. Consciousness is the key. You want to heal your relationship? You want healthy interactions with your partner? You have to be at a level of consciousness that creates healthy interactions with your partner, period, end. So it's the level of consciousness that heals and improves your relationship, not communication. You're talking about your programs, my truth, my wound, that makes it work. Nobody heals from just talking. Just hear me. What we're really saying is, I'm showing up as an immature little baby who's unhealed, and I need you to be on the same page. I need you to see my perspective because my perspective is right. I need you to validate me and make me feel like I'm right. That is how we're communicating. Those aren't the words we're saying, of course. That's the message energetically that we are portraying, because when we are triggered in a conflict with our partner, our programs are running, our wounds have been activated, they've taken over, and our my truth bullshit, my perspective, what I believe, what I want, is what comes out in our communication. What also happens is, in our communications, here's to the emotionally fragile. Here's to those of you who carry the disease of emotional fragility. You ready for this one? I don't like your tone. You can't keep talking to me unless you change your tone. How fucking emotionally fragile are you? Now, I'm not talking about legitimate abuse when somebody is yelling and being verbally abusive to you. I'm not talking about you should be okay and at peace with that. So do not misunderstand. But think about this. When you are extremely frustrated, how does your voice sound? How does the tone of your voice change? When you are extremely frustrated about something, does your voice get softer? Can you feel the nurturing, understanding energy coming from my voice when I am so frustrated about something? Guys, we have to learn how to be in the way of presence and the way of surrender with other people's emotions, because we continue to weaponize and demonize people's fucking emotions instead of just being in the way of presence and harmlessness and gentleness and surrender and all the other ways of oneness, allowing them to move through their emotions in a healthy way. Moving through emotions in a healthy way doesn't mean you fucking suppress them. And no, it doesn't mean you're abusive and screaming and yelling and saying, fuck you, you're a piece of shit, I fucking hate you. Oh, you're just supposed to be the way of surrender when I do that. No, 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 no. It's not what I'm ever teaching. Do not ever misunderstand that. Okay. But if somebody's like, oh my God, like I'm so fucking frustrated right now. Oh, let me shift into the way of surrender and the way of presence for you and the way of harmlessness and gentleness for you. I'm sorry that you're so frustrated. Would you like me to sit with you while you move through this? Right? Like this is how we start to show up as actual powerful beings. Okay? Actual powerful beings. Grab your copy of the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness on Amazon, by the way, if you haven't purchased it already. You can learn about the ways of oneness and how to show up in these scenarios. So understand something. Simply communicating can be one of the worst things that you do when all you're spewing are your mental programs, your emotional programs, your inner child wounds at your partner. That does not ever, ever, ever heal or help your relationship. Ever. Never, ever. If you understand that, what are you communicating? Well, I'm just communicating my needs. Careful. Are you demanding, expecting? Because those are two programs that we love to run in relationships. Are you coming from neediness? Another program we love to run is the program of neediness in relationships. If you're coming from those programs, those mental, emotional, behavioral programs, if you're coming from your inner child and an inner child wound, which means you're a child, you then automatically, energetically make your partner the parent to you in your conflict or your situation that you're moving through. And you're just communicating about that and talking about it is the healthy thing to do. So it's not about communication, it's about consciousness. So let me tell you what we offer in our relationship coaching programs and our group programs for relationships at Masters of Self University. What you learn how to do, number one, is never fight again, because you don't ever have to fight. You'll have conflicts. You will. There's no such thing as not having conflicts in life. No such thing. There is no such thing as never having another, conflict in a relationship. You might not see eye to eye on something. You might have a conflict. Conflict doesn't mean fighting. It doesn't mean you argue. Anybody that tells you arguing and fighting is just a normal part of a relationship is fucked up and dysfunctional, and they haven't healed and elevated their level of consciousness enough to teach you otherwise, which is why they're teaching you that nonsense. Be careful who you listen to. And this is never about the, toxic positivity fucking bullshit and suppressing your emotions and acting like nothing is ever wrong. Like you're never going to disagree with your partner. Like you're never going to get annoyed with your partner ever again for as long as you live. Like that's ridiculous. You'll get annoyed with your partner sometimes. Like you'll be frustrated with your partner. Those are normal human emotions. It doesn't mean you have to fight with your partner. It doesn't mean you have to be in judgment of your partner. It means, oh, look at that. I'm really annoyed and frustrated at what she's doing right now or what he's doing right now. Let me heal and alchemize that. And then if there is an actual ongoing thing here that we need to address, that really does need to be addressed, I can do that from a high level of consciousness. I can do that by being connected to my divine power. The way of connection is an energetic connection to your soul, simultaneously energetically connected and grounded into your human experience by being connected to the heart and soul of Mother Earth. This is an energetic thing to become the way of connection. I am connected. I am the way of connection. And I should not open my fucking mouth to my partner and communicate anything about anything if I am not first the way of connection. If I am disconnected from my divinity, I need to zip my lips and shut the fuck up. I shouldn't be communicating. You see how important it is to learn to become the universal ways of oneness. Seriously, go grab the book on Amazon. Start reading about it. Grab our digital course, the 20 Introduction to the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, so you can literally start to become the ways right away. Boom. Start today. Okay. You need to have the book in order to move through the digital course, just so you know. Okay. So come prepared. But in all seriousness, grab the book, read the very first way, get to the introduction and the way of responsibility, and then take the digital course and take the first class of the way of responsibility and start to learn what it means to become each and every way of oneness. All right. So let me be clear. If we can communicate from a high level of consciousness, and what does that mean? It means we learn how to engage and interact with our partner, never from our programming, never from our brainwashed bullshit, never from our wounds, never from our inner child showing up as an immature little child in the relationship, making your partner the parent by default, never showing up in your mental, emotional traumas and behavioral programs and all the things. Never. We learn to interact from our divinity, from each and every of the 20 ways of oneness. We learn to show up as the way of responsibility, as the way of patience, as the way of surrender, as the way of truth, presence, connection, compassion, harmlessness, and gentleness, equality. We learn to show up as the way of trust. We learn to show up as the way of honoring, and on and on and on until we can master every one of those ways. You can't, it is literally impossible to have a dysfunctional, unhealthy relationship if you are functioning as the ways of oneness. It isn't even remotely possible. And although in your human experience, you may still have a conflict here and there, you still show up as the ways to handle and move through the conflict. It's incredible and it's amazing and it's powerful and it's divine. And conflicts, when you can move through them as the ways of oneness, as them, I am them, right? So I am showing up as each and every way during this while I'm moving through this conflict. And if I am showing up as those ways of oneness throughout this conflict, then conflicts are the gateway to expansion. Conflicts are actually the gateway to expansion because conflicts make us uncomfortable, don't they? It's not like you want to have a conflict with any human being on the planet. You don't want to. But when you learn to meet the conflict and move through the conflict as a being of the universal ways of oneness, then that conflict is the catalyst to expand and become more elevated and more enlightened. So conflicts in your relationship serve the same exact purpose. They serve the same exact purpose. They can actually elevate you to expand to a higher level of enlightenment and become a more powerful representation of each and every of the 20 universal ways of oneness. Does that make sense? So that, even though a conflict for us humans, when we're here in human form, even though conflicts in our relationships can be, nerve-wracking, they can be a little scary, they definitely are uncomfortable. It's not like they are pleasant to move through, right? Nobody wants to be in conflict with their partner, right? And that's okay. That's healthy too. Of course, you don't prefer to be in conflict. If you prefer to be in conflict, you're running a shit ton of programs that sabotage relationships. You're addicted to chaos. You're addicted to toxicity, right? Your shadow self, your ego feeds off of conflict and disruption, dysfunction, fighting. Like those are all programs that you're running to sabotage healthy relationships. Make sense? So anybody who, truly wants a healthy relationship, you understand that although we don't want conflicts, we don't prefer them, but we don't resist them either. That is non-surrender. Resistance to a conflict is the opposite of the way of surrender. The way of surrender means, oh, there's a conflict. This is uncomfortable. Ugh, a little nervous about this. I'm very uncomfortable. I don't like this at all. And yet I'm going to drop in, connect to my heart. I'm going to become the ways of oneness that are needed I need to become specific universal ways of oneness. I need to become higher in my elevation of the becoming of the ways of oneness. And this conflict gives me the opportunity to become certain ways of oneness or to become more powerful so that I can finally or fully at some point complete the most potent, elevated, highest level of vibrational frequency that exists as that particular way of oneness. Okay. So if I'm not quite the way of surrender yet because I still offer resistance to conflict, then guess what that conflict is offering me? The opportunity to actually become the way of surrender. That's the beauty of conflict. As uncomfortable as they are, that's the beauty of moving through conflicts. Right? Do you understand? So it isn't about just communicate. We need to communicate more. We need to talk more. We need to, you know, we need to talk about this 3 hours later, we're still arguing and running in circles, like getting nowhere. You're trapped in the hamster wheel. And that is not simply communicating more is oftentimes the worst thing that you can do. And I hope you realize now why. Because when you communicate, you're literally communicating your programs, your wounds to your partner. You are projecting your mental, emotional, behavioral programs, your inner child wounds onto your partner. So the worst thing you can do is communicate more. It is the worst thing you can do. So don't make this mistake. Do not then automatically go to that egoic, shadow, dualistic bullshit, which are nothing but mental programs that tell you, so what do? Just shut down and shut up and never talk again? Oh, I called you out. Some of you did that. Some of you thought that. Oh, like I would teach something like that. Come on now. You should know me better than that. What the fuck? Of course not. You don't do the extreme opposite. That's egoic third dimensional paradigm mentality. Of course not. No such thing. Extreme opposite is never good. Right? So we don't know. You don't shut down, ignore, deny, suppress. That's not what you do. You don't communicate from the level of dysfunction that you are in. That is what you do not do. What do you do instead? Well, I say go to Masters of Self University and sign up for one of our coaching programs. That is what you should do. So you can learn step by step what to do, practice, have a guide teaching you exactly how to do it, be successful, and then do it on your own independently, and then you're good to go. That's what you should do. But what should you do is take a time out and learn how to identify what programs are coming up, what wounds are coming up for you in this conflict, in this thing that is making you and your partner fight or uncomfortable or whatever it might be. Take time alone. And, I joke and say, go to Master Self University, get your coaching program right now. Yeah. I joke and I tease about that. But in all seriousness, we teach you how to achieve this. There's a process for this, literally, step by step in bite-sized pieces that you actually learn what to do and how to do it. So, in seriousness, I hope you would go visit our website and think seriously, like seriously consider learning the process of this. You're not going to learn the process, practice it, and get the guidance and the course correction along the way to make sure you're successful from a podcast episode. Okay. I'm giving you everything I possibly can in a podcast episode, but it's just a podcast episode. This isn't coaching, right? So know the difference. So what do you do in these moments? You learn how to identify the programs, the wounds that are there. What programs are running and what is the core wound that is triggering my emotions, my behaviors, my mental programs? What are the core wounds that are activated because of this conflict, because of this scenario or situation. You learn to identify them, and then you learn how to alchemize them on your own independently, because you don't need another fucking person on this planet once you've learned how to do it, to do that for you, right? You may need another person on this planet, a professional, an expert, like those of us at Masters of Self University, to teach you how to do this. That's different than neediness of my partner needs to be there doing this with me. No, what you first learn to do, instead of spewing and vomiting your wounds, your mental, emotional programs onto your partner, is to actually cease communication. Shut up. You are making your relationship worse. It is deteriorating because you're in these patterns. These are behavioral programs. We have to talk all night long, hours at a time. We have to figure this out right now. Those are dysfunctional, unhealthy behavioral programs. So you stop all that, and you learn to go within and see, what programs am I running? And you learn how the process of connecting the dots to what the wound is. And then you learn on an energetic level to alchemize the wound. What happens then? You are no longer coming from your shadow self, your ego, your wounds, your programming. You're not coming from your dysfunctional you. And when you can come from your healed, a little bit more healed you, more divine you, more powerful you, that is when you connect with your partner. Okay, I'm ready to share. You connect. You create a time that you can come together to connect for a short period of time. That 3-hour shit, get that out of here. It's draining and it is exhausting. We're going to connect for the next 10 minutes. We're going to connect for the next 20 minutes. And I'm going to share with you what I learned about myself. And it's okay. I was so triggered by you. I was so triggered because of this and that. That is just the way of truth. It's not judgment. It isn't blame. It isn't pointing fingers. It is, I was so triggered by this. And here's what, when I went away and spent time alone and I went inwards, here's what I've learned about myself. I learned that I was showing up as a 6-year-old wounded child. Here were my mental programs. Here were my emotional programs. And this is why it was so triggering to me. And I healed. I healed some of those layers just now. I feel a little raw, but I also feel healed and more elevated and lighter and more whole and more powerful and way less judgmental of you. I'm not projecting anymore. I'm not blaming you anymore. I really moved through some incredible healing. And that is what I want to share with you. And your partner learns to receive that and then to share what they have healed. They don't say, you make me, point finger, blame, blame, blame. We don't do that nonsense anymore. It's ridiculous. And by the way, it doesn't mean that your partner was not, it doesn't make them right. It also doesn't make them wrong. It just makes us more highly conscious and elevated, that we have the ability to see what our programs are, what programs get triggered in each other when we're interacting in our daily day life or when there's a conflict, that these are the programs that got triggered. These are my wounds. And then to actually take the steps to heal them independently on my own, because I'm a powerful, I am a sovereign, divine being. None of this codependent child-parent fucking relationship bullshit anymore. And no more communicating to each other from our goddamn programs and wounds. So communication does not improve your relationship as a blanket statement. No. It can actually destroy it. It can deteriorate your relationship over time. I hope you now understand how and why, right? So, what am I communicating? What part of me wants to do the communicating? Oh, good question to ask yourself when you're triggered, when there's a conflict. What aspect of me, what part of me wants to do the communicating with my partner? So here is a question that I'm going to invite you to ask when you are in fact in conflict with your partner. There's something wrong, or you're going through a hard time in your relationship or whatever. What part of me, when there was a conflict or problem, or we just had a fight, I'm triggered. What part of me wants to communicate with my partner right now. And it's time to get radically honest. The way of truth, the way of responsibility, the way of integrity, the way of harmlessness and gentleness. What aspect of me actually wants to communicate with my partner? Is it a 4-year-old powerless, helpless me that wants to make sure we're okay? Is it a 4-year-old powerless, helpless me? Is it a 12-year-old? Is it a 16-year-old that's fucking angry and rebellious and wants to project and point the finger? What part of me wants to communicate with my partner right now? Now, here's where a lot of you fall into a trap. Oh, the me that wants things to be healed and fixed and good. Go deeper. If your partner is running programs and coming from wounding, the divine, powerful part of you, that includes if you become the universal ways of oneness, then you become the way of wisdom. That is way of oneness number 19 out of 20. The way of wisdom, if I am the way of wisdom, I am becoming the ways of oneness myself as a being. So I have the wisdom when there is a conflict or problem in my relationship to know that if you as my partner, are doing nothing but coming from your own wounds and your programs, and you're just going to project those onto me, the way of wisdom guides me and says there's no communication that's needed, nor that should be had. I'm not a punching bag. I'm not a dumping ground for you to vomit or diarrhea your fucking wounds and programs all over me. A powerful divine being isn't a doormat. And just because you're my partner doesn't mean I need to sit and listen to you spewing and dumping all your fucking programs and unhealed, wounded bullshit onto me. That is not what it means to be in divine partnership. You don't get to judge and blame and criticize and do that dysfunctional, nasty shit. And a divine partner knows this. If I am the way of wisdom and I see what programs you're running, communication is the last thing that should be had. Because I'm not a dumping ground for your bullshit. So no, we are not going to communicate and talk about this. A divine person, a powerful divine couple who are each doing the real work to heal and elevate and become the 20 universal ways of oneness. They know that relating to you means I will not relate to you when you're going to project all of your shit and blame me and judge me and criticize me and want to fight with me. That's abusive. That's dumping. That's emotional dumping, behavioral dumping. And a powerful divine being sets a boundary and says no to that. No, there doesn't need to be a conversation. Well, we have to figure this out. Well, not when you're in that energy. Not when you're coming from your wounds and your programs. No, there's nothing to figure out because you're trapped in your egoic mind. You're trapped in your wounds. Your wounds are communicating to me. Your programs are communicating to me right now. I don't communicate with your programs or your wounds. That's not who I communicate with. I communicate with your divine soul. That's who I am willing to communicate with. Imagine if we set that fucking boundary on people. I'll give you a little secret. That is the boundary that is used and set and how I run my corporation. We don't get to show up as immature little children in my corporation. That is not how we interact with each other. Showing up as bratty, entitled little fucking children. Selfish, bratty fucking children. Spewing, judging, criticizing, blaming. And when we have those programs that are activated, well, let's join the coaches forum. Let's join the 2 meetings we have every single week in my corporation for people to show up and say, oh my God, I'm fucking frustrated. I'm running programs. And we all support those coaches, the people in the organization. They rally around, they uplift, and they support one another. It's okay that you have those programs. It is not okay that you project them onto anybody in this fucking organization. That is the difference. And it is the same thing in romantic relationships. No. I want to be heard. Oh, if it's your programming and your wounding and your inner child that wants to be heard, you need to be silent. Sit down, shut the fuck up, and go heal yourself. Step away. No. Allow your divinely powerful self to show up in your relationships, to handle conflict, to handle problems. Allow your divinely powerful self, the you that is becoming the 20 universal ways of oneness, the you that is becoming more enlightened, more divinely powerful, more sovereign all the time by the divine definition of that. Allow that part of you to show up and then deal with a conflict, a problem, a scary, challenging situation. Allow the divine you to come online. But that bratty, entitled, ignorant you, narcissistic you, that part of you that is showing up, trying to run the show and solve conflicts and problems and communicate and be heard, I need to be heard. All that fucking bullshit. Everybody needs to be heard. Ego loves that. Your shadow self loves to be fucking heard, doesn't it? Loves to be validated. And that's the problem. We continue in our ignorance and low level of consciousness and a lack of elevated spiritual education. All we're doing is fucking reinforcing people's egos. I want to be heard. Oh, we'll hear you. If you're coming from wounds and programming, you shouldn't be speaking. You shouldn't be heard. No one should tolerate listening to you. No one should tolerate. You don't get to be heard just because you're alive on this fucking planet. Think about this, because I love extreme examples to hit the teaching home. If you had somebody screaming from the rooftops about how to murder children, let's just hear what they have to say, because they should be heard just because they're alive on the planet. We should listen. No, we fucking shouldn't. No, that's not something we should listen to. No, not everybody should be fucking heard. We shouldn't be reinforcing this bullshit. That's not inclusion. It is brainwashing. Learn the fucking difference. We should just hear how all of these men are attracted to young little babies and children and how they want to have sex with them. We should hear them out. No, nope, we shouldn't. No, we shouldn't. That's not inclusion. It's motherfucking brainwashing. And you can't be stupid enough to fall for it anymore. So no, simply communicating and just being heard in your relationship is fucking dysfunctional. Learn how to be silent. Now, for those of you who just got triggered and thought, but my man never talks. He never opens up. What are you talking about? He's just supposed to not engage. Nope, not what I'm saying. And men, if you thought for 1 second that just shutting up and going away and avoiding your programs of avoidance and shutdown and denial, great, she's saying I can do that now. No, I'm not. Let me call that out. Women do it too, by the way. That is more predominantly a program that men run. Of course, women can run it too. That's not what it means. All right. So don't misunderstand. Don't use it and weaponize it because you misunderstood the teaching. Okay. So that's not what it means. It means, am I doing the real work while I step away and while I'm silent? Are you working on yourself? What are my programs? What are my wounds? What's really going on with me? Why am I so triggered? Let me take the way of responsibility. Let me take radical ownership for it. Let me become the ways. Let me actually heal and elevate out of this. Are you healing and elevating out of the conflict? And then are you communicating from the space of your divinity, from the way of connection, from the connection to your divinity? If you are disconnected from your divinity and you are connected instead to your programs and your wounds and your inner child, you shouldn't be communicating anything to anyone. Sit down, shut the fuck up, do some healing, get the help you need, and learn how to energetically detach from those aspects of you, alchemize and heal them, and only then connect and communicate from what it means to communicate as the way of connection, right? That's part of what you'll learn if you come to Masters of Self University. You learn the steps, you learn the different levels to get to, I only communicate with my partner as the way of connection, as the way of presence, as the way of harmlessness and gentleness, as the way of trust, as the way of equality, as the way of honoring, as the way of selfless service, as the way of truth, as the way of, as the way of, as the way of. Do you understand? That's what you want to learn how to do. Communicating just to communicate has become wildly out of control, completely fucking irrational. It is dysfunctional. It is unhealthy. Everybody is just like, I want to be heard. No, shut the fuck up. People need to learn how to shut the fuck up. Zip your lips, heal, elevate, and only communicate as the way of connection, as the way of presence, as all the ways. If you are communicating as a being of the ways of oneness, and that is how you are communicating, conflicts can be moved through and handled like magic. It is unbelievable what can happen when you're showing up as the ways. Like, I'm not going to show up. I vow to myself, I'm not going to show up as entitled fucking brat because I didn't get what I want. Instead, I'm going to alchemize how I feel about not getting what I want. And I am going to become the way of responsibility, the way of patience, surrender. I'm going to become all of the ways of oneness. And as the way of connection, I am going to connect to my divinity. And only after I connect to my divinity do I then connect to another human being to move through a conflict. I don't care if that's at work, in your corporation, with your children, with your spouse or partner, with a friend or a family member. Only as the way of connection and all the ways of oneness. The power that has, if you can elevate enough to become the ways, to move through conflict, to heal 1,000 times faster than you've experienced in the past when it comes to trauma, negative emotions, painful emotions. By becoming the ways, it elevates you. It elevates you beyond what you can comprehend right now. So if you're interested in learning more, make sure you purchase the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness on Amazon, but also go to our website, mastersofselfuniversity.com, and go to our work with us, look at our digital courses, and dive into Introduction to the Universal Ways of Oneness. You do have to have the book and read the book first, or along with the course. You have to purchase the book in order to engage in the course, to get everything that you need to get out of the course. But that digital course is available. So dive in, enjoy it, learn it, start to become the ways. It's just an introduction because these teachings are so elevated. You cannot possibly become each and every universal ways of oneness in a matter of a week or a month or a year. It is a process, but the level of elevation is off the charts. So go check out that course and take the course. And remember from this episode that just because you're communicating doesn't mean it's healthy. And often it is causing more damage and offering more dysfunction and more toxic poison to your relationship than not. Simply communicating is not the healthy way to comprehend what communication is. Divine communication comes when you are, and is offered when you yourself become a beingness of divine communication. And you can't do that if you are disconnected from your divine self. So if you're connected to your wounds, your programs, and that's what is communicating while you're communicating to any other human being on this planet, especially your partner, if that's who's doing the communicating, your wounded inner child, your, program of entitlement, your program of self-righteousness, your program of I'm right, you're wrong, that's inequality program. If you're coming from that, I'm superior, you're inferior to me right now, another inequality program, instead of healing all that shit and becoming the way of equality. And then you offer during your communication to your partner the way of equality, your communication will be very different. What your partner receives from you will be very, very drastically different, because we are learning how to communicate as the ways of oneness, as beings of the ways, the highest level of enlightenment that humans can achieve in this lifetime, literally throughout the entire age of Aquarius. This is the highest level of enlightenment that is attainable by humans, is oneness consciousness, are the universal ways of oneness. So keep that in mind. So become the ways, heal your damn relationships, communicate at a divine level by becoming the ways of oneness. So thank you for listening. Please click that like button for us. That helps us. And share this with everyone you know, because that helps us as well. Visit mastersofselfuniversity.com for our programs and offerings. Make sure you read Mason's Way, the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, and don't hesitate to grab that digital class, Introduction to the Universal Ways of Oneness, that you can find on our website, mastersofselfuniversity.com. With all my love and all the ways of oneness, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now, everybody.